Hey, good afternoon to everyone who is live with us, managed to open YouTube, or maybe you're listening later on the podcast. Also, good afternoon or evening or morning or Saturday or whatever it is in your world. But appreciate you guys joining us. Gabe DeArmond here, Sean Williams with me. This is the Tuesday Tiger Recruiting Show on PowerMizzou.com. We are going to talk a little bit of recruiting. Before we do that, we always talk a little bit of insurance. And those two things go right together. Obviously, one leads right into the other. You want to check with James Carlton, State Farm in Webster Groves, Missouri. If you live anywhere in the state of Missouri or the state of Illinois, James Carlton wants to be your insurance agent. Home insurance, life insurance, auto, whatever it might be that you need. If you just want to save a little bit of money or find out at least if you can save a little bit of money, contact James either at carltoninsurance.net or by phone at 314-961-4800. If you mention Power Mizzou, he gives you a quote, he's going to donate $20 to Mizzou's NIL collective, advancing Missouri athletes. And like I joked, but sometimes maybe that could actually help out in recruiting as time goes along. Sean, what's going on, man?
Ironically enough, it could, maybe a situation we'll talk about here in just a second. But yeah, it's going good. Always, insurance could go hand in hand for like a lot of Missouri fans might have needed a little bit of extra insurance if they didn't pull off that game against Vanderbilt on Saturday.
Yes,
because no telling what they would have done.
I don't know if there's such a thing as like self-harm insurance, but there might have needed to be some on Saturday.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Self-harm insurance, anything that, might have accidentally happened while you're drunk and you're belligerent and you're angry over a loss to Vanderbilt. But luckily, the Missouri was able to pull that off. And they had some visitors on campus, which makes this podcast, this live stream, a little bit more lively. We have things to talk about and a potential commitment coming up possibly this week. So
they had a lot of kids in here. I mean, Sean, you said they were down about, it would have been down about a loss. I mean, this kind of shows you they're down about a win. Please tell me there's some recruiting news that will help lighten up the black cloud over the football program. They won for the first time in a month, and it's a black cloud. And look, I get it. We were joking about the game beforehand. But I'm going to give you, Sean, the option. Do you want to start with what we expect to be good news or what we know was bad news?
I mean, I think Missouri fans deserve to start with good news first, potential good news, so, and we'll talk about. Go ahead, serve me up. Gabe.
I was going to say you are projecting some good news. I am going to let you have the first shot at pronouncing the name of what you believe the potential good news could be for Missouri in the next couple of days.
Going back to grade school, sounding everything out. I mean, I'm going to go with Missouri did have an official visitor on campus this weekend. It was Serene Tankura. I'm going to go with that.
Okay.
Hey, man, it may be pretty close. I may be way off, but hey, but he is a 3-star defensive lineman out of Clear Springs, Texas. He is a guy that Missouri offered back in the spring, back in May. Kevin Peoples, the D-line coach, has been kind of his primary recruiter. And it's kind of one of those, we kind of talked about it before we came on air, kind of like a Philip Roche type of situation. They offered him in the spring, didn't hear much about him throughout the summer, and now all of a sudden they kind of pop up, and here they are. And but he tweeted out he was taking an official last week, took it over the weekend, and seems like he is going to be the next Missouri commitment in the 2023 class. So when it comes to D lineman or he's listed as a DM, whether he ends up being a DN or a D tackle will be determined. I mean, he's listed at like 240 pounds. So, kind of like a Jakai Lang situation, we'll kind of see when they get to campus, but he's kind of in that same range in terms of size and everything like that. But he'll become expecting him to become the second D lineman commitment in this class. So,
and I mean, that is my understanding of it is Urban Meyer's the guy who started this in college football, but this is why you offer 200 kids, right, in the spring or whatever. And it's why the word offer has kind of taken on some different meanings. I mean, he had an offer in May, and look, maybe he could have committed that day. We don't know that for sure, but we just didn't really hear much about him. And then you get 4 or 5 months down the road and some guys have gone elsewhere. You know a little bit more about where your numbers are. So maybe you've gone from just kind of telling that kid he has an offer and just lightly keeping tabs on him to, hey, we'd like you to come in. And you know what makes that a lot easier is if you can say, we'd like you to come in. Now, remember, I mean, we offered you 6 months ago, dude. Like, we've liked you for a long time. So we'd like you to come in on an official visit. And it's how they get right, wrong, or indifferent. It's how the game's played.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's just kind of recruiting. That's just nature. You kind of explain that, pretty accurately. You offer a lot of kids in the spring, and they may not necessarily be high on your target board at that moment in time, but then they kind of move up the board because you miss on some other guys, and other guys have gone elsewhere. And you kind of circle back around, and I'm assuming Missouri has stayed in contact with him throughout the process, but it's just kind of been like now it's kind of amped up a little bit where they're like, well, he's kind of next up on our target board. Let's bring him in for an official, and I think we like his his senior film enough for we'll take him as a commitment. So it seems to be the case here.
And I'll be interested to see, if this ends up happening and whenever we get to talk to him. I mean, right now, his offer list says it's Louisiana, Louisiana Tech, Ole Miss, Missouri, and SMU. But this kid's a 5.73 star out of League City, Texas. I mean, if you're in Texas, you're not really flying under the radar. We haven't done an article on him since April. I'm not sure we've ever done an interview with him. So I think it's certainly possible that this kid has more offers than that, and we just don't know about him yet.
It's possible. I think TCU has offered too, just to kind of stay in the Texas realm of things. But all these offers, like you mentioned, were kind of back in the spring, and I think he picked up a couple in the summer. So since the summer, and he hasn't really picked up any new offers. And it seemed like, just according to just kind of looking at his Twitter feed, it seems like Houston and Oregon State. And I think maybe Louisiana were kind of showing some interest in sending graphics and things like that. So maybe those are other schools that are kind of heavily involved with him right now at this current time, along with Missouri. But it seems like, obviously it seems like Missouri's got him on campus, got the official visit. It seems like they're in the running to probably get a commitment from him sometime this week. So,
I mean, if you're looking for indications, his last two tweets are a retweet of a Mizzou recruiting assistant and a retweet of our Texas analyst, Nick Harris, tweeting that he had entered a FutureCast prediction for the kid to go to Missouri. So I don't think there's a whole lot of suspense here other than when we might actually get to watch the video.
The video, or the quotes,
the graphic,
the graphics, and he's probably waiting for commit graphics, or maybe he's doing a video. You never know what that's what kids do these days. So
100%. So that would be, hang on, I think commitment number 13. Is that accurate? Because I think the other kid we're going to talk about in a minute was going to be so he would be number 13. And two defensive linemen. Defensive line is an interesting spot to me because Missouri just has so many guys that, I mean, could come back for another year, could leave, some young guys that haven't necessarily gotten on the field very much. Are they going to stay? So like every other position, it's in flux, but maybe even more than some, because literally I think Missouri's starting for defensive linemen and really their top six, like they could all come back, but they could all decide not to as well.
Right. Yeah. I think we've talked about this, quite frequently, but it's kind of in flux. I mean, you just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, just in terms of other defensive line targets off the top of my head that Missouri's after, in terms of the high school ranks and JUCO, I know they offered a JUCO guy, Nana Onyenwu.
Yes, so, I want that kid now. He should sign with Missouri. I'm a big fan of that.
He was actually on campus for the Abilene Christian game. So, I think he's taken some other visits elsewhere. And then they offered the Taj McCoy kid out of Putnam City, Oklahoma. So those are a couple of other defensive linemen that are on the radar. I don't know if they're going to take another one, but like I said, that position is kind of in flux. I think they'll probably know kind of the outlook of it toward the end of the season and how many more guys they probably need to go after, whether that's from the high school ranks, JUCO, or, like I said, possibly a transfer or two. So, we'll kind of find out.
Okay, so I do want to invite you guys, by the way, if you've got comments, if you're watching live, comments, questions, whatever, put them in the queue and we'll certainly throw them up and talk about what you guys want to talk about. But mentioned it was bad news, good news. So last Friday, I don't know, finally about 7:00, something like that. Marvin Burks officially committed to Ole Miss, and thank God it's over, man. Like, that's all I can really say about that one. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but we'll just say that there were times on Friday where both Missouri and Ole Miss were relatively convinced he was going to come to school there.
Well, I was going to ask you, what kind of disclaimer am I going to go with here? Do you want me to go in deep, or you want me to just kind of?
Well, look, in recruiting, it's never official until the Instagram live video has been played, right? And there are times when that Instagram video goes live that nobody's really 100% sure what's going to happen, because multiple things may have happened leading up to that with multiple schools, and that's fine. Look, I do want to be clear kind of on when things go this way. Like, in this day and age of college football, the natural reaction is, well, it's NIL related. And I understand why somebody would think that. I also want to say that, look, we can't, I mean, it's not just something you can throw out there and say, because we don't know that. We don't know what the deals are. We don't know. And obviously, again, NIL is never involved in recruiting. Nobody would ever do that. But no. So, we don't want to go down speculation avenue with the high school kid. But it was very much kind of a back and forth, up in the air thing until Friday afternoon, and Burks ends up committing to Ole Miss, and maybe that'll stick, maybe it won't. Maybe Missouri still tries, maybe they don't. I honestly don't know the answers to those questions.
Yeah, I'll just say there was a lot of confidence he was going to Missouri, and then there was a lot of confidence he was going to Ole Miss. So, and that's just kind of the way some of those situations kind of play out. Is this over? Hey, it's not over till the ink is on the paper. So, still got a little bit of ways to go.
And even at that point, it's really only over for like 9 months.
Yeah, I mean, you can enter the transfer portal, and just start all over, man. Hit the reset button anytime you want to. So, that's kind of just how it goes. So, yeah, it's interesting to kind of see how this will play out, and if Missouri's still going to really pursue Burks. But I don't know.
I mean, to me, at some point, you just go, that's fine. I mean, the kid made his choice and move on. I mean, it's obviously directly related to how good of a player they think he is, right? Mm-hmm. If they think he's really worth it, then yeah, you continue to keep in touch. And if they think, yeah, he's a guy, but we can get a guy just as good, then okay, that's cool. You're at Ole Miss, and we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, they've offered plenty of other secondary options lately. So, I mean, they've got other guys they can kind of, turn their attention to and bring in for officials and kind of see where that goes. And, maybe just kind of figure out if there's people just going to leapfrog him on the pecking order just because at some point you kind of just be like, well, we're not going to wait any longer. We have to make a decision here, and we like this guy.
And it probably relates to if there's somebody else at the position that wants to commit, right? I mean, if somebody else wants to commit, you say, yeah, we'll take you, and you don't worry about whether Marvin Burks opens things back up or not. Mm-hmm. But if you get to December and you still have a spot, and he says, hey, I'm kind of thinking about this, then okay.
Exactly.
So that kind of leads me to something that I didn't warn you that we were going to talk about this, but I kind of was thinking about it earlier in the week. And then Eli Drinkwitz said something at his press conference today that made, he was talking about, somebody asked him about hiring an offensive coordinator and all that. And he was talking about how much the job has changed and how many more things are on a coach's plate now with NIL and recruiting and all this stuff. So, we were talking leading up to last week's game that the game against Vanderbilt, I thought, was the most important game that Eli Drinkwitz had coached at Missouri. So he's in a situation with Marvin Burks going to commit on Friday. I don't know how much time he spent on it, but I'm guessing, he was on the phone and he was doing a decent amount of recruiting of Marvin on Thursday and Friday in the final 36 to 48 hours before that game kicks off. It just kind of led me to think, I wonder how long it takes before a college football program or multiple college football programs say, we need to change the way we're doing this. We need to hire a guy who's our football coach, who coaches the team and coaches the games and all that. And yes, he's involved in recruiting to some extent, but then we need to hire a general manager. We need to hire a guy who's in charge of, these conversations on a Thursday or a Friday during the season or while coaches are game planning, hire a guy who's kind of in charge of talking to the people about NIL and stuff like that, so that we can take some of these things off our head coach's plate. So our head coach isn't trying to line up NIL deals and recruit the kid and coach the team and do this. I just wonder if there might be situations where they go, we're just going to hire a college football GM.
Yeah,
I think it'd be a good idea.
Well, I mean, look, Vanderbilt's kind of doing that just because I have a little bit of knowledge. Barton Simmons is kind of their GM, quote unquote GM. That's kind of his title. So, obviously he's, been at Rivals and 247. So he's dealt with all this stuff, and he's I think he's heavily involved with NIL stuff too with them. So, yeah, I mean, and I'm sure other schools, but other schools have kind of incorporated that too. But here's the thing, Gabe. Like if you go into a situation like Marvin Burks and he's making a decision, you got to get the head coach on the phone, right, to kind of make that last plea. So they're going to have to be dealing with it anyway. So, but yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing more teams kind of lean toward specific roles just for recruiting, NIL, handling situations like that. Get the head coach on the phone whenever you need to, and in situations
the head coach can be the closer, because we can joke all we want, but everybody in the world knows all these kids are getting NIL offers. It's happening. So we can joke all we want about how it's illegal, but every school in the country is doing it. I mean, that's how NIL has become more about recruiting than it has about rewarding players who have ever actually done anything on the football field. So I just wonder, and again, like you said, it sounds like there are schools doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, I know Missouri hired Brandon Lee, a former football player, to be kind of in charge of NIL at the university, but I don't know that I don't know what his role is exactly. At some point in the offseason, we'll have to get Brandon on a podcast or sit down with him and talk about that, because I'm curious what if that role is in any way kind of like this.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious too, just how much, I mean, obviously, it's brought up in conversations during the recruiting process, but when exactly is that conversation had, is it on a visit, and you kind of have the charts and graphs and you kind of say, hey, here's our NIL deals, here's the potential you can get, every school's probably going to be a little bit different in that and their NIL plans, but when exactly those conversations happen, and how prepared are you to have all the information available to the kids and everything like that. It's just kind of the way it is now.
And I think every school has a presentation that they do, and the funny part of it and the way they all get around the rules is they never say like, hey, we're going to get you X $100,000 to, I mean, some of them probably do, but the general approach is, well, obviously we can't promise anything because we can't negotiate an NIL deal as a recruiting inducement. But just for an example, we had a 4-star kid that plays your position from your hometown last year. And this year, like the first week he was on campus, he had $78,000 in NIL deals, or whatever. I'm just throwing out numbers, but like, that's how it works. It's all this hypothetical. Now, we're not saying this is going to happen for you, but if you came here, there's a kid that seems exactly like you that it happened for,
Oh, I mean, look, I'll bring up, things that we've seen in pictures during visits, and that's cars on campus, and delinquents driving cars around with recruits. Man, that's kind of part of the presentation, right? But I mean, that could be another selling point. Like, hey, we got to deal with Jim Bob Cooter's, car salesman down here, and he's so and so.
We do have 7 kids driving these Mercedes around. Just saying.
The Mercedes tiers right here. We have 4 kids in that tier, okay? Right. And now we got the Chevy. We got the 1990 Chevy truck that's used. And then we've got 35 guys in this tier right now. Right. But if they play a little bit better, they'll move up, okay?
Everybody else is renting bird scooters to drive around campus. But I mean, can you seriously imagine? I truly am not against kids getting paid, but this thing is becoming so ridiculous. Can you imagine like going to a job interview and thinking, well, I'm going to take this job because like the boss flew in a helicopter and then drove away in a Jeep. That's all. That's why I'm taking this job. It's nuts, man.
Yeah, it's interesting, and that's why I am kind of curious. And you bring up a good point. I'm kind of curious how the NIL discussions go during visits or even on the phone too. I mean, you FaceTime somebody and be like, "Hey, here's a chart, and here's our NIL deals," and just kind of curious how that's all handled. But it's being discussed, and charts are being made and shown to everybody. So that's just kind of part of the process right now.
Right. $1,000 bills just happen to fall out of pockets and all kinds of things, right?
Sound like you're in a 1990s rap video there.
That's college football recruiting. All right, so let's get to a few of these questions and comments. Freeway Jared says a huge defensive drink is give him time. He's recruiting well. Will that still be a narrative if this class keeps trending how it's trending? I mean, I think Eli Drinkwitz is going to have to win before the 2023 class. Really, we know what it is, right? And, as far as on the field, he is going to need to win next year. And next year is going to be all about, is Sam Horn your starting quarterback? And is Tavoris Jones on the field? And is Xavier Simmons playing linebacker? And I'm just picking kids out of the class. Are Dominic Lovett and Luther Burden putting up big numbers, things like that. So if we get to the middle of next year and like Tavoris Jones isn't playing and Sam Horn isn't playing, and a lot of these high 3-star and 4-star kids haven't yet beaten out guys on this team, or he's taking transfers because he doesn't feel like they're ready to play, then to me, that's when the he's recruiting well thing kind of goes away. Because if he's recruiting well, those guys are those are the backbone of the team next year. So if the recruiting rankings are right, if his evaluations were right, we're going to see those kids on the field. If we don't see those kids on the field next year, that to me is when the whole he's recruiting well thing doesn't really hold much water anymore.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. And, it's something we've talked about on here, but I think you put a post on the message board maybe last night or today. I can't remember, but I read it, agreed with it. Next year is going to be a big, kind of indicator of how well, recruiting's going, because like you said, the
how well he evaluated, not how well he recruited, but how well he evaluated.
Right. Exactly. Because you mentioned there's already kind of, a big question mark at running back, just in terms of where's the talent at, and, guys that were kind of heavily recruited and had offers, and they're in here and they're not really getting a lot of playing time right now. So how,
like that's what BJ Harris not getting on the field worries me.
Right.
Just to pick what DJ Jackson not playing this year worries me. I mean, these were guys who saw the field last year and now aren't. And so if that becomes a trend in this, and now look, he's got Luther on the field. He's got Mekhi Miller on the field. Like, some of these guys are playing. So I'm not saying he's not recruiting well, and I'm not writing it off. I'm just saying next year, most of those kids better be in the 2 deep.
Yeah. That's I agree with that. You're gonna have to look through every position and be like, okay, is this kid he brought in, through the high school ranks, and have they developed, and have they, is kind of like an assessment of evaluation and development, and next year looking at the depth chart is going to be kind of a big indicator of that, just kind of going through every position and seeing, how many of these kids are actually on here that he recruited and brought in, and how many are kind of transfers that are just kind of like maybe, fill-ins for other guys that haven't developed or are not on the 2 deep or whatever. So,
yeah. And again, his job is to get talent. Like, if he knows BJ Harris and Taj Butts are guys that he doesn't think are going to contribute, then yes, his job is to go get a transfer to play running back. But it also is a sign to me that there's a question about the evaluation. I mean, people are going to think I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. And I want to be clear. Recruiting rankings as a general rule do matter. They do. But there are exceptions on both sides. Guys who get low classes and make them good, like Gary Pinkel did. We watched that here for a long time. And there are Butch Joneses and Bill Callahans out there who get good classes and can't turn them into good football teams. So my point is, next year is when we start to find out, hey, let's make sure that these good recruiting classes are an indication that Eli can put a good football team on the field. And let's make sure there's not a Butch Jones element going on here, right? And I'm not saying there is, but next year is when we get a good indication of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned talking out of both sides of your mouth. It's a podcast, man. That's what
I
they're
can say
about.
anything I want, right? Right. I mean, tune in next week. I might say the exact opposite of what I just said.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, hey, that's how these things work, right?
Yeah. Okay. Michael asks, saw pictures of an ambidextrous QB, Mikey Gow, on the sidelines at homecoming. First of all, is that true? Does he can throw with either arm?
I have no idea if he's ambidextrous. I do know he's a 2026 quarterback. I don't know a whole lot about him.
God.
Haven't done a lot of research on him.
Okay,
So
we
yeah,
can't talk about that anymore.
I don't
2026, we're not talking about that.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know enough about him right now to really go in depth there.
Yeah. Mike says if Horn plays and if he plays well, you wonder how that changes offseason recruiting. I kind of don't. I don't think it's. I mean, first of all, I don't have any indication Sam Horn is going to play enough that like they're going to be able to sell. Look what this kid did the last 5 games. I mean, Drinkwood said today, could he play this weekend? Yes. Am I telling you he's going to play this weekend? No. So I just don't think there's very many kids out there that are going to be saying, well, I was going to go here or I was torn between 2 schools, but Sam Horn went 35 for 46. So now I'm going to Missouri. I just don't think that's really going to be a thing.
I don't think it would be either, especially considering the start that they've had and the struggles they've had in the passing game right now. I mean,
because even like, let's play Pollyanna world here. Suddenly Sam Horn is the starting quarterback this week and Missouri goes 5-0 and they finish 7-5. I mean, is that like a needle mover for a lot of kids late?
I don't think that would be a needle mover for top tier guys, but I mean, right. I think you could be a needle mover for mid tier guys, so.
Yeah. Okay. So Kyle was just asking specifically about the running back transfer. Do you think they're interested in Arlen Harris? I don't know what Arlen Harris did at Stanford. I also think that you have to be judicious in not becoming the program that will say, it's fine if you leave because we'll always take you 2 years later. I mean, some of those kids, Mookie Cooper, they decided it was worth it. I think it looks like probably he was worth it. He's playing well this year. But you can't set a precedent that it's fine if you don't come here the first time. We'll take you in a couple of years. I mean, you do it for some, but not for everybody.
Look, you already having issues trying to find some stability at running back. Arlen Harris is a freshman. He hasn't proven anything in college yet. If you're going to go,
has he played at Stanford? Do you know?
He's played 1 game in the season opener, and he's got 2 carries for 1 yard. If you're gonna go get a running back in the transfer portal, you better get somebody that's played some games and has, shown some production in college.
Again, if you go get that kid, what does it tell Tavoris Jones?
Exactly.
What does it tell B.J. Harris if he is still here? What does it tell Jamal Roberts? Like, to me, if I'm Jamal Roberts and they take Arlen Harris, I'm going, hang on, man. I'm the running back in this class.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So, like you said, if you're going out, and, by the way, Nate Pete and Cody Schrader both could come back next year. Like, I don't think Cody Schrader's playing in the NFL. He's dreamed of being a Missouri football player his whole life. I would think he's a guy that takes the extra year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
mean, like I said, they already got a Stanford transfer running back on the team. So,
right. He just, as of about 2 hours ago, got demoted to second team.
Yeah.
So, and that doesn't mean that Arlen Harris is. He's had a decent season, but that's not a position where I think it's smart to go transfer unless it's a guy that you can't. Hey, if you can go find what Michigan State found in Kenneth Walker 2 years ago, by all means do that.
But Kenneth Walker also, proved he could do it at Wake Forest.
Right.
So I mean, there's a difference there. It's like, but I think it's automatically people's mindset that hey, Arlen Harris is from St. Louis, so he also instantaneously there's that Missouri connection there. You want to stay closer to home, but you just can't do that for everybody.
Right. Yeah, 100%. So, all right. So sometime this week, we're thinking Serenia Tunkara. That's what I'm going with.
Sounds good.
Anything else really super? I mean, I sent you a list of like 40 kids last week. Was there anybody that would really turn heads or anything on that visitor list that people should be fired up about?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to mention a couple of other 2023 kids. I mean, they offered a new tight end. Now, obviously, Of course, when I mentioned this on the board, somebody's like, "Oh,
they need to offer like 12 more."
Well, first off, which I knew this was coming, does that mean Brett Norfleet's going to leave?
Right.
And then right after that was we're tight ends. Well, we don't have those in our offense. So, which was, but anyway, Jordan Harris, he's out of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. He came in. I don't think he was on the list originally. Just kind of one of those guys that popped up and, he got an offer. But he's a 6'7" kid, 230 pounds. He's got a basketball background. One of those kind of guys. It's kind of ironically enough, Missouri offered him while he was on his visit, and then Vanderbilt offered him. So those are his 2 Power 5 offers right now. South Florida did offer him, and I think he's got an offer from Bowling Green and maybe somebody else I'm thinking of. But he's kind of one of those guys. He's picked up some offers in the fall. His film is kind of popping. Obviously, he's got some measurables: 6'7", 230 pounds. He can block. He can catch. He high points the ball. So, Missouri's got him on campus. They offered him, so you got to think they're in the driver's seat here pretty early. I'm kind of curious to see who else kind of gets in the mix. Doesn't seem like he's in a hurry to really make a decision. I think he's kind of one of those players who's like, hey, I've got new offers coming in. I'm going to see who's actually going to come in the rest of the way before even make a decision, maybe take some other visits. So I know he said maybe he said Washington and a couple of other schools were kind of showing him some interest right now. So that's a guy to kind of keep an eye on. They also had the Jaden Hobson kid, the Southern Miss offensive line commitment. He was also on campus. So they just recently offered him. And so it was kind of nice to see him kind of come up quickly for a visit and check out Missouri. Really loved it. Really has a good relationship with Marcus Johnson. Really was impressed with his visit all around. Got to talk to the coaches a lot before the game. Really likes Missouri, but once again, it's almost like a situation where he's got more schools kind of showing him interest. He's going to kind of wait it out and see what happens. I know he mentioned Florida State is one of them. I think Mississippi State as well. I think he's going to take some visits to those places and just kind of feel things out before signing day and just kind of see what his options are. So.
One other kid who I happen to see on the sidelines because I happen to know his family is 2024 Rockbridge quarterback Sam Kaiser. He's listed at 6'6". And Sean, do you understand how tall 6'6" seems when you're standing next to it when you're my height?
Yeah, I mean, because
he's a giant.
Yeah. It's pretty tall. I mean, you also have got to mention Jackson Cantwell too. I mean, 2026 freshman at 6'8" and 270 pounds. So,
yeah, he Olympic bloodlines there. All Missouri fans know who he is. Real quick, Daniel Swift has a question. JUCO lineman, what are the chances with the 4-star and the 6'8" kid from Tennessee? I don't know if you know who he's talking about. 6'8" offensive tackle from Tennessee.
Yeah, the Brandon Solis kid that was recently in for another visit. I mean, I'd say the chances are pretty good, but I think he's going to be kind of one of those kids that, he's mentioned other schools that are showing some interest. I know he took a couple of officials during the summer to like Boston College, and I can't think of the other school off the top of my head, but he's going to be kind of one of those kids that, he's probably going to take some other visits before he actually signs on signing day. But I think Missouri's in a good spot. He came in for the spring, watched a practice, and then he came back for the Georgia game. So, I mean, I think that's a good sign whenever they come back. So he hasn't taken an official visit with Missouri, so that'd be kind of interesting to see if he actually does that after his season is over and whenever they start bringing kids in for officials. But, I think they got a pretty decent shot at him. And obviously, they've offered one of his underclassmen teammates as well. So, we'll see what that happens. The JUCO guy, I'm not really sure. I think he said the 4-star. I think he's mentioning the Blackstone kid. The kid from Coffeyville that's an offensive lineman. I know he's kind of blown up. I don't know if they'll get him on campus. I know he was, interested in visiting, and all of a sudden, everybody else in the country started offering him. So I would say less likely with him than with Solis right now on the offensive line. So.
All right. Well, there you go. Sean has all the knowledge. I'm just here for smart-ass comments. So
talking out of both sides of your mouth. So
appreciate everybody joining us again. If you watched live, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, do all those things. If you're listening to the podcast, which I am putting up shortly after this, then please leave us nice comments, good review, share what we're doing on social media, all that. Regardless, please get in touch with James Carlton State Farm Insurance. The phone number and the internet address have been scrolling across the bottom of the screen all throughout the show. carltoninsurance.net on the internet. The phone number, which you would think I have memorized, but I don't. So there you go. 314-961-4800. You can get in touch with James. Team of 8 there. You're always during business hours going to get a live person. None of these, just tell me what movie you want to see menus. You'll actually talk to a human being, and they'll will take care of anything you need insurance-wise. And if you tell them you heard about it on Power Mizzou, they will donate $20 to Mizzou's NIL collective, assuming that you do get an insurance quote from them. So if your insurance costs a leg and an arm, James Carlton, State Farm. Sean and I will be back next Tuesday. Gerard Hamilton and I here 2:30 tomorrow talking Mizzou, South Carolina. So thanks, guys. See you later.